All right, welcome to my YouTube channel. Today we're going to do an Aurora Borealis fun background, and then maybe possibly you can paint something on top of that. But let's go ahead and start at the bottom, then we're going to work our way up. I'm starting with my large angle shader. This one's in number, it's like a 1 inch sort of, or close to, it's actually a 3/4 inch, so it doesn't have to be huge. And I'm just working on an 8x10 canvas, always using just my primaries plus black and white. I want the bottom to be a little lighter so that I can add a silhouette to the bottom later, and it's actually going to show up. So I'm going to start with a little bit of red and just sort of swoosh it onto the bottom. So we're going to go red first, swooshing it on side to side. Notice how I'm making it really thin. So that's what we want to do first. I'm going to go up a little bit. I'm kind of going at an angle to create some movement. And then I'm going to start to add blue. So a little bit of pink, and then we're going to go into a little bit of blue. Notice I'm keeping it really thin at first. You can even dip your brush in water and mix it into your paint. And you can even mix your red and blue together to create some purple if you want. So that's an option. Or you can just layer it on top of each other and you'll get it. Let's just get a little bit of this in here. And again, I can always go back to more red. And if I want it to be a little lighter, you can always add a little bit of white. And if you need to go back to just your red, you can always clean your paintbrush and go back and forth between your colors. So usually I just clean and dry. And then maybe I'm like, oh, I want a little more red down at the bottom before I start going darker. Then I can do that now. I'm just keeping it really thin. Now, if I want more of a pinkish color in some spots, which I do down below, I could just take a little bit of white into that and then add it to the top before it dries. Yeah, I could add a little bit of white in there. Not too crazy. And then as I go up, I do want my colors to get darker. So down here, it could be a little lighter. You know, you can even mix a little bit of white in the bottom part of the canvas, just to get these lighter colors. But then as we go up, we want it to get darker. So I won't add any white. You can just mix red and blue. And this is going to start to get a lot darker. So much fun. Just red and blue. I could use more blue in some spots. Just notice the difference in the shades you can get. Maybe I want some parts that have a little more blue. And some parts that have a little more red. I can just kind of go side to side. And notice how if I lift my brush in the middle, it's going to leave a mark. But if I pull it all the way through, it'll smooth that out. So a lot of times people wonder why there's a mark on their canvas. And it's just you need to pull the brush stroke all the way through, especially if your paint is on the thinner side. But we are going to paint over this, so I wouldn't really worry about it too much. Now, if we want to adjust the colors at all, we have a base layer on there of just these fun pinks, purples, blues shades. But maybe you want it a little lighter at the bottom still. You can always go back in and layer a little more white on top of your colors, just at the bottom. So maybe I'll add a little bit more down here, just to make sure it stays light down here. You can even let it be kind of wispy. Just want to create some fun different colors. And I'm not adding a lot of paint. If you add too much, it can be kind of overkill. But notice how it just adds a little more depth and a little more lightness. And when we do our Aurora effect, we actually do not want there to be the background to be wet. So layering with the wet background is going to be more of a blended effect. But if I have this dry, it'll be harder to blend. And that's actually what we want for the Aurora sky. We also want it to be a little darker at the very top than what we have here. So what I'm going to do is clean the brush, and I'm still going to have a little bit of red and blue mixed together, but I'm going to add black. And this is really going to bring the color dark. And I want this at the very top. And then I don't want too much though. I'm going to pull down, and the black will kind of run out, and then it will fade into blue. So pull it on top of the blue a little bit. You don't want it to be covering the whole thing, but we want to darken it up at the very top. Keep it kind of medium through the middle and then light at the bottom. And you can always go in and make it a little thicker at the very top to make it really dark at the top. The goal is just darker at the top, medium through the middle, and then lighter at the bottom. And then, depending on what you're doing today, you could let that dry on its own, or you could just hit it with a blow dryer, which is what I'm going to do. And then it's dry. Now we want to put some stars in there, and then we would put the Aurora lights over that, because those are going to be in front, more in the atmosphere of Earth, whereas the stars are like way out in space. So the stars are there, and then the Aurora lights are over the stars. So for stars, I like to use a short bristled brush, something like a bright brush, something that has the short, firm bristles. You could even use a toothbrush. And I like to get my brush a little wet, take it to my white, pull some white aside, and water some of your white down a little bit. Not too watery or it won't stick on the canvas, but watery enough so that it breaks the binder down a little bit and it's easier to spray. And then I just scoop the brush. Notice I'm just like scooping up that watery white. And then I'm going to take it and just point it at your canvas and just gently pull the bristles back. And you got some splatter stars. So fun. Yeah, if you want to have some more deliberate stars, you could always take a small round brush, a small round one, and then get the tip. And then just do some deliberate little pokes to the canvas. So maybe you want a star in a specific spot, like you want one, you know, maybe I want one like right here. I'm like, it has to have one right here. Then take charge of that. Take your white on your thing and just gently dab it. Now, sometimes people struggle with the paintbrush doing star stuff. So a couple of things you can do. One of my favorite things to do is to use a toothpick or something like that, or a shish kebab skewer. So something pointy, like sharp, or even a pin or something. You can just dip the tip of that in there, and then it will give you a very, very, however small the tip of that is going to be about how small you can get your star shape. Or you could just, using the back of a handle, of a brush handle, dip it, and then go in and just very gently. Notice I have kind of a lot of paint on there. And then I just barely let it touch the canvas. If I push harder, I'm going to get a bigger star. So just, work with that. See what works best for you. No pressure. And now we're going to add some Aurora lights. Now I'm going to use just a shade, like a square or a shader brush. You could use really any brush you're comfortable with using, so don't feel like you have to be restricted to what I'm using. So it's like kind of a small one because I'm working on a pretty small canvas. And then I just want to decide what my light Aurora light colors are going to be. So I want to have some that are like more of a turquoise color. So I'm going to take blue with a little bit of yellow and white. The white is important. You want it to look really bright. And then I'm just going to kind of go towards the middle sort of section here. And I want, actually, now that I see it on there, I want more white and blue. So you might see it go on your canvas and be like, wait, that didn't really show up the way I wanted it to. So then adjust your color. Okay, there we go. That's a little bit more what I wanted. And then I'm just going to pull the side of the brush gently up. And notice I can make like different little shapes going up into the sky. And I'm just pulling softly, wisping. And then you can have different little things coming out. Maybe you have like a little thing over here. It's a little different. And then that's going to be a good starting point. I could also take more white and like layer it on top of that. And then you could also do a kind of a fun thing. And again, this is like a shader brush. So it's like an angled square brush. You can, once you get it in there, maybe you have a little excess paint, you could take a clean and dry brush and then just sort of sweep it out into the background like that. This is kind of more of a Bob Ross way to do it. He kind of piled paint, a little bit of paint up, and then would feather it out with a fan brush or something like that. So that's something that you could try. I'm using just a bigger brush now, still just the angle. Maybe you don't like that as much, so you know you can experiment with things, and you can experiment with different shades. So maybe I want to use more blue, and then I can layer that over, and it will soften it. So you want to try to get different shades. This is key with this kind of thing because you're creating this ethereal look, kind of like doing a galaxy. You really want to get different shades, and that's what's going to give it its look. And so now I'm just taking extra blue. So I have a little bit of turquoise on my brush with the white and yellow, but then I'm taking extra blue and putting that over it to soften it because I think it got a little chunky and bright and I want it to have a little bit more softness to it. So I'm just feathering that over this, make it look less chunky. Just working this texture over our background, playing with it. So hopefully you're having fun doing that. It shouldn't be too crazy. And again, I can add more. Maybe I just want it to be more blue on this side. You can add more color going up. And then you could also add more of the white back in and just change it. And I'm just going from side to side, creating this wisped, kind of feathered out look. And that's a good base coat for it. I'm just letting this color dance on top of the other color. And then I want to add a little more white again and go over it again. But this time I'm going to keep it a little bit more, not spread it out as much. Just wiggle it in on top of what I've already created. In the same kind of way, just sort of putting it in there and then maybe feathering it out a little bit. And then if it gets away from you or if you feel like it gets too chunky, clean your paintbrush off. Just clean it and dry it. And then you can take that paint and spread it around before it gets too dry. But essentially you're building a layer on top of what's there, and it's going to get a little brighter as you do that. And I'm just working with the primaries, so you could even get a little more extreme if you want more like neon colors or really bright colors. You could get pre-mixed really bright colors that might be a little fun to play with. But maybe I want some more yellow in some spots to just get a little bit more of that neon aurora light effect. And you can just get a little bit and feather it on top. Maybe making sure you're mixing a little bit of white in. So it's just a process. I'm just adding a little bit of yellow and white. And just feather it out a little bit. Like it's too, mine gets a little thick, and then I just sort of swish it around so it's a little bit thinner, spread out more. Maybe I even just use some pure white on top of that. Still just playing with blue, white, and yellow. Any variation you want to do of that. And you can even use your finger. So if you want to play around, you know, you could always just get a little bit of white on your finger and then like wiggle that into that space. Let that be interesting looking. So there's lots of ways that you can create effects with paint. Sometimes doing something with your finger is going to get you where you want to go better than a paintbrush. I always like to invite you to try a lot of different things until you feel that whatever is happening is looking the way you want it to look. And you're just trying to create something that looks kind of nuanced and interesting. And again, you could always come back. Maybe I just want more of a blue with a little bit of white mix. So notice the difference between this is a little more greenish. Then we have something that's a little more bluish. It's good to get different shades as you're playing with those different colors. So you got to play around until you're happy with what is happening, and I'm going to keep it really simple. I don't want to go too crazy today because I don't know, it can go really far and you can play with it forever, but it's also fun to just keep it simple, let it go, see what happens, learn from it, finish the piece, and then even just try a whole new piece. But I might add a few more stars to just create a little more drama with that. And I'm doing this around all of the little Aurora effects. You can do like twinkle stars. You can really do a lot of fun stuff. I'm just going to do regular stars. Because again, I'm keeping it really simple today. Sometimes it's fun to just do simple stuff, not feel like you have to do anything too crazy. But we can put a fun little theme down here. And again, keep in mind, you can always blur things out, make things softer. So, you know, using like a clean paintbrush, totally up to you. But I'm going to go ahead and add a request for the Callanish standing stones. So I'm going to do a little bit of a silhouette with that. And it's going to be really simple, but we're going to create like a dark silhouette at the bottom, which I'm going to use a little bit of black and blue mixed together. And then I'm just going to go down here and make some land. And we're just going to paint it down. And leave some of the pink showing if we want to. And then you can even take some of that blue and white and mix it into your black and add a little bit over the top of your color for that to give it a highlight. I like to do this while it's wet, but you can wait for it to dry. But I think it looks kind of cool if you just do it while it's wet, because it gives you more of a subtle highlight. And then we can create these stone shapes. So if you want to use a smaller brush, you can, but these are kind of just like square rectangle shapes. So maybe, and they have like a little bit of like strange movement to them. So I can just make these shapes. And you can do anything here. You can do like pine trees, mountains, whatever you want to do. So I'm just gonna put these in. And then again, you can touch up anything you want. You can highlight a little bit. So, you know, just using like a simple square brush or something, you could use that turquoise color or like just mainly a white and blue kind of color. And you can highlight these things by just adding a little bit of that color to the tops of them or the sides. Just so they're not super flat. Could look kind of cool. And since my paint is still pretty wet, it comes off as really subtle. If your paint was dry, the highlights would be a lot more bold. So keep that in mind as you're going. And you can add more highlights to the back, the kind of the top of the land here, in between the stones, or in between whatever shapes you put.